The doors of the Galactic Council's grand chamber slid open, and Evelyn Turner stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor. In the expansive hall before her, alien dignitaries from dozens of star systems gathered, their eyes cold and dismissive. She had spent years preparing for this moment, the first true diplomatic engagement between Earth and the galaxy's most powerful species. But all that preparation felt like a distant memory now, drowned by the weight of their condescension. She wasn't afraid. Yet, her every instinct screamed that she should be. "We are pleased to welcome the Terran representative," a smooth voice echoed from the center of the room. It was Jean-Nar, a lanky creature with shimmering scales, whose species, the Myrox, had been one of the first to encounter humanity. A gesture from him signaled the translators to activate. "Please enlighten us. What makes your species worthy of inclusion in the Galactic Council?" Evelyn met his gaze, her spine straightening. For months, humanity's brightest minds had toiled to create a presence that would demand respect. But as she scanned the alien faces around her, some snickering, others rolling their multifaceted eyes, she understood immediately. They didn't think humanity belonged here. "I'm here to show you what humanity can offer," Evelyn said, her voice steady, though it felt thin against the weight of their judgment. "But before I do, I need you to understand one thing. We don't play by your rules." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Several of the council members exchanged knowing glances, murmuring amongst themselves. Evelyn stood firm, refusing to be rattled. "You may think we're nothing more than a young, primitive species," she continued, her gaze cutting through the mockery. "But that's exactly what makes us dangerous." Jean-Nar raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Dangerous? Please, enlighten us with your primitive danger." Evelyn stepped forward. The holographic screens flared to life beside her, each displaying images of humanity's accomplishments. The first was a model of Earth, its history, the rise of its nations, the creation of alliances that led to the formation of the United Earth Government. She moved the display with a wave of her hand, bringing up the next image, the Ark Project, humanity's effort to create interstellar colonies. She cycled through data on space exploration, showing their fleet's farthest reaches into the stars. But as she spoke, she could see the Council's disinterest building, their body language a silent message. They were unimpressed. Their advanced ships, weapons, and technologies dwarfed Earth's fledgling attempts. A few snickered openly, while others stared off, as though waiting for her to finish so they could get to the real business, discussing the status of the superior races of the galaxy. "You're all far more advanced than we are," Evelyn said, forcing her words to land with weight. "But that's exactly why you should be afraid." A few of the council members raised their eyebrows. Some looked intrigued, but the majority were unconvinced. It was Jean-Nar who spoke next. "I fail to see why we should be afraid of a species with no significant military strength and technology barely above that of our primitive allies," he sneered. "What can you possibly offer us?" Evelyn's gaze sharpened, her resolve hardening. "We may not have your technology. We may not have the fleets you command. But we have something you'll never understand." The room fell silent. She had their attention now, even if only for a moment. She inhaled, her voice low but full of authority. "We have something far stronger than your weapons or your warships. We have the will to fight, the will to survive. And that, Jean-Nar, is something you can never predict." She pressed a button on the console in front of her, and a new image flickered to life. It wasn't an image of human technology or the Earth's rich history. It was a footage of the recent Hyperion strike, humanity's first successful military operation against an invading force of star-dwelling marauders. The tactical brilliance, the precision of their tactics, and the sheer determination of the human soldiers were evident. The council members, who had laughed, now shifted uncomfortably. The image wasn't spectacular by their standards. It was rough, untamed even, but it was unmistakably human. "You think you can wipe us out with your fleets and superior technology," Evelyn said, her eyes now sweeping the room, challenging each alien to dismiss her. "But you won't. We'll keep fighting. And every time you underestimate us, we'll come back stronger." Janenar's expression faltered, his earlier arrogance slipping for the first time. "You can laugh at us now," Evelyn continued, her voice growing quieter but harder with each word. "But you will remember this moment, and you will regret ever thinking that humanity was weak." The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn had made her point. The council wasn't laughing anymore. The stage had been set. The door to the future had just opened, and no one, not even the Galactic Council, could predict what humanity would do next. The sharp, cold silence of space was shattered by a single, horrifying reality. Earth was no longer defenseless. As the Galactic Council members retreated to their private chambers, still reeling from the shocking words of humanity's ambassador, a much darker truth was unfolding. In the quiet expanse of space, beyond the stars that had long been studied by the galaxy's elite, the human fleet assembled. It wasn't just any fleet. It wasn't even their first. But this new line of ships, the Tartarus-class warships, was something entirely different. They were faster, smarter, and more importantly, armed with a power that no alien had ever seen before. The Council had laughed at humanity's weapons, dismissing them as primitive, unrefined. But Earth's best minds had been working quietly, pushing the boundaries of technology far beyond the reach of their alien counterparts. And now, with humanity on the verge of being written off, those weapons were ready to be shown in all their terrifying glory. Inside the sleek, towering Nemesis, the flagship of Earth's new fleet, Evelyn Turner stood before the holographic map of the galaxy, her thoughts racing. She had come to the Council as an ambassador, a diplomat, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. Diplomacy had failed. Now, Earth had only one option: to fight. "Ready for the order, ma'am." Commander Daniel Hayes's voice broke through her thoughts. His tone was professional, but there was a weight in his words, an understanding that this moment was irreversible. Evelyn nodded sharply. The Nemesis wasn't just the fleet's largest warship. It was the culmination of humanity's newfound mastery of space warfare. The ship's sleek frame housed experimental weapons, shields stronger than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and a new propulsion system that could warp reality itself. This wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's declaration that they would not be crushed under the boots of the Galactic Council. "Begin the countdown," Evelyn said, her voice calm but fierce. As the order echoed through the command deck, the Nemesis's engines hummed to life. But it wasn't just the flagship preparing for battle. Earth's full fleet, hidden in plain sight, had been dispersed across the galaxy, stationed at critical locations. No one outside the human race knew just how many ships Earth had managed to build in secret. Until now. Back at the Galactic Council's headquarters, the counselors had already begun their deliberations, convinced that humanity had been bluffing. After all, what did Earth have to offer compared to the mighty fleets of the Uxori or the Myrox? Nothing but a fragile resolve. Jannar, the Myrox representative, had been particularly vocal in his dismissal. "They're nothing," he had sneered. "A few scattered warships, no match for our fleets. Let them waste their time." But that arrogance was about to be shattered. As the human fleet powered up, Janar's laughter still echoed in the council chambers. He and the others believed they had crushed humanity's hopes. They believed Earth's threats were nothing more than the desperate ramblings of a species on the verge of extinction. That was before the first salvo was fired. Evelyn's hand clenched into a fist as the screens in front of her showed the Nemesis's weapon systems charging. The weapons were powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, but that wasn't the primary goal. Earth's message wasn't just about raw power, it was about defiance. A single blast from the Nemesis tore through the void, its target the empty expanse of a forgotten star system. The shock waves sent ripples through the nearby asteroid fields, the blast visible for light years in all directions. It wasn't an attack. Not yet. It was a warning. Back at the council, the effect was immediate. One by one, the members fell silent, eyes wide with disbelief. The shock wave had traveled through their sensors, a direct hit to their egos. The concept that humanity could create such a force was incomprehensible to them. Jannar looked around. his arrogant expression faltering as his people struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had just transpired. The Nemesis wasn't the only ship to fire. Throughout the galaxy, humanity's other warships, each one outfitted with the same weaponry, followed suit. The blinding brilliance of their firepower lit up the stars as they sent a message to every corner of the galaxy. The Council was no longer laughing. "Alert the Council. Tell them to prepare for a response." Janenar's voice came through his communications link, shaky but demanding. "We underestimated them." Evelyn's gaze didn't falter as she stood in front of the holomap, watching the results of the display. The ships, the weapons, everything humanity had worked for was coming into fruition. But as confident as she felt, there was no denying the stakes. This was no longer just a diplomatic matter. Earth was on the verge of war with the most powerful forces in the galaxy. And there was no turning back now. The countdown to humanity's future had begun. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed through the corridors of the Nemesis, but Evelyn Turner didn't flinch. She had heard all the warning signs, the Council's dismissal, the insults, the mockery. But it wasn't until now, as her fleet lay in wait, that she realized the magnitude of the miscalculation. They had underestimated humanity, and it was about to cost them everything. "Ma'am, we've received confirmation. The entire Galactic Council is mobilizing," Commander Hayes said, his face a grim mask of resolve. "They've already begun their counterattack." Evelyn's eyes darkened. She had been ready for this moment, the moment when diplomacy failed and the Council's true intentions would come to light. What she hadn't expected was just how blind the Council had been to humanity's potential. They thought they knew what Earth was capable of, just as they thought they understood every species in the galaxy. But they had been wrong. Humanity wasn't like them. Humanity fought when others would bend, and survived when others would fall. "They think we're just a nuisance," Evelyn muttered, more to herself than to anyone in particular. "They think we're easy to crush." "Ma'am," Hayes asked, his voice cautious. "They haven't seen the worst of us yet," she replied, her voice ice-cold. The Nemesis' holographic map flickered to life once more, the incoming alien fleet now clearly visible. It was massive, composed of a dozen ships, each larger and more heavily armed than anything Earth had fielded. At first glance, the numbers seemed insurmountable. The ships of the Galactic Council had the technology to rip apart anything in their path, and they had the firepower to wipe out entire planets. They believed that a few scattered human warships would be nothing more than a speed bump. What they didn't know was that humanity had learned to fight smarter, not harder. The new fleet was built with ingenuity at its core, an unpredictable, resourceful edge that no one could anticipate. And it wasn't just the ships that had been re-engineered. Humanity's strategies had evolved. They had learned to outthink their enemies. As the enemy fleet drew closer, Evelyn stood tall. "We don't fight like they do," she said, glancing at her officers. "We don't rely on sheer power. We rely on our adaptability." "Ma'am, we're ready when you are," Hayes said. The flicker of uncertainty in his voice was quickly buried by the professionalism that had always defined humanity's military. The order was given, and the Nemesis and its fleet moved into position. But this wasn't going to be a conventional fight. No, humanity had a different weapon in its arsenal, something far more dangerous than alien technology. Evelyn's hand hovered over the control panel, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. One wrong move, and Earth would be doomed. But this was humanity's moment to show that they would not be cowed. The first wave of enemy ships came into view, but instead of meeting them head-on, the human fleet veered sharply to the left, taking advantage of the asteroid field nearby. The enemy fleet, so used to brute force tactics, hesitated. "What are they doing?" Janenar's voice crackled through the comms, his disbelief palpable. "They're retreating?" "No, they're not retreating," one of the other counselors replied, confused. "They're positioning themselves." The council's ships advanced, confident in their overwhelming numbers. But humanity had already anticipated their moves. As the council ships entered the asteroid field, the human fleet ambushed them with pinpoint precision, using their smaller, faster ships to outmaneuver the larger alien vessels. One of the first enemy ships exploded in a fiery burst as it collided with a hidden mine set by the Nemesis fleet. The blast sent shockwaves through the enemy line, causing chaos as they scrambled to regain their footing. "Now," Evelyn ordered, her voice cutting through the frantic energy of the bridge. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of fire, expertly coordinated and deadly accurate. One by one, the alien ships began to fall, not because of the sheer might of humanity's firepower, but because Earth's fleet had anticipated every move the Council would make. The battle wasn't about size, it was about intelligence. Genenar's frustration echoed through the comms once again. "This is impossible. How are they doing this? How could they have predicted our every move?" The reality of the situation was dawning on him, and with it came a sinking realization. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. And they were winning. Evelyn's heart pounded as the tide of the battle turned in humanity's favor. For all their advanced technology, the Galactic Council had missed the most important lesson of all. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't in their ships or their guns. It was in their ability to adapt, to think outside the box, to turn the tide of war when the odds were stacked against them. "They thought we were weak," Evelyn whispered under her breath, watching as another enemy ship was destroyed. "They thought we were predictable. They were wrong." And as the battle raged on, one thing became painfully clear. The Council's underestimation of humanity would cost them everything. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity's resolve. Now, the consequences were unfolding across the stars. As the alien fleet scrambled to regroup, humanity's fleet advanced with precision, striking hard and fast, more than a mere retaliation. This was the beginning of something far worse. The Nemesis soared through space, its engines humming with power. Evelyn Turner stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the battle unfolding outside the ship's massive viewport. The Council had expected humanity to crumble, to bow before their superior fleets. Instead, they had provoked a force they couldn't understand, a people who fought not just for survival, but for their right to exist. "Ma'am," Commander Hayes said, his voice tense, "the enemy is pulling back. They've suffered heavy losses, but they're reorganizing for a counteroffensive." Evelyn nodded, her face a mask of determination. The Council had underestimated the one thing that made humans dangerous, their unwillingness to surrender. Earth might have been behind in technology, but no one could match humanity's willpower. "Their retreat won't last," Evelyn said, watching the holographic map as enemy ships recalibrated their strategies. "They failed to grasp that we don't fight like they do. They'll learn soon enough." The Nemesis was ready. Humanity's fleet, now numbering in the hundreds, was positioned in a way that no other species would have dared. They had learned to leverage every advantage, from the smallest ship to the largest warcruiser, using tactics that were unpredictable, relentless, and unyielding. "Prepare for the next phase," Evelyn ordered. "We're taking the fight to their capital." As the fleet made its move, Genenar's voice crackled across the comms, his tone strained. "You've overplayed your hand, humans. You think you can just destroy our fleets and march to our doorstep." Evelyn's lips curled into a thin smile. "You should have thought of that before you provoked us." The Galactic Council had just made the fatal mistake of assuming Earth was weak. But Earth had done more than fight. They had infiltrated, studied, and adapted. The Nemesis wasn't just the flagship of humanity's fleet. It was a symbol of what they had become. As the human ships advanced, it was clear that they weren't just a force to be reckoned with. They were becoming a nightmare that would haunt the Council for centuries. The first wave of human ships entered the Council's outer defense perimeter, striking with precision. The Council's elite ships, once thought invincible, were suddenly vulnerable to tactics they had never seen before. The human fleet attacked in waves, using guerrilla tactics, feints, and false retreats that forced the Council's warships into chaotic positions. "I don't care how many ships they throw at us," Evelyn muttered, watching the explosions from the Nemesis' tactical screen. "We'll break them." The enemy was panicking. Their formations fractured under the relentless assault, and humanity's unpredictable tactics left them scrambling to adjust. But Evelyn knew that this was only the beginning. The Council had mobilized their last fleet, their best forces. This was their final stand. Suddenly, the comms flared to life. A Council representative, this time the fierce and proud Zaxril, voice trembling with fury, snarled, "You dare destroy everything we built? You think you can break us? You'll regret this, human." Evelyn's response was immediate. "We regret nothing." The Nemesis launched another round of devastating fire, sending one of the enemy's larger ships tumbling into a nearby asteroid field. It was a symbolic move, a message that humanity would not be cowed. The alien ships retaliated, firing on the Nemesis with devastating force. For a moment, Evelyn could feel the tremor in her ship, but she didn't flinch. The Nemesis' advanced shields absorbed the blast with ease. It was the culmination of years of secret engineering, technology that had been developed in the shadows of humanity's quiet revolution. Now, it was paying off. "We've got this," Hayes said, as the Nemesis fired again, this time striking the heart of the enemy fleet. Genenar's voice broke through the chaos again, but it was no longer filled with certainty. "You're not fighting a war, you're fighting an extinction. We will not let you destroy us." Evelyn took a deep breath, her hand gripping the armrest of her seat. The Council's arrogance had been their undoing. Humanity had come from nothing, scraped its way through the ashes of a dying world, and now they were at the cusp of greatness. The war was far from over, but Evelyn could already feel the tide turning in humanity's favor. "Then we'll show you what extinction looks like," she said, her voice colder than the void itself. The battle was far from finished, but the Council had already lost the one thing they never expected: the fight for survival. Humanity wasn't just in this war to win. It was in it to change the galaxy forever. And nothing, not even the combined might of the Galactic Council, would stop them now. The Council had finally realized their grave mistake. Humanity wasn't just a threat, they were a ticking time bomb, and the countdown had already begun. Genenar's voice was frantic, cutting through the chaos of the command room aboard the Nemesis. "They've destroyed our fleets. We have no choice but to escalate. Prepare the full force, now." The Nemesis' crew, battle-hardened and resolute, stood ready. The enemy's response had been swift, but Evelyn Turner wasn't about to let their desperation cloud her focus. Earth's fleet had already crushed the Council's remaining forces, yet the galaxy's elite was far from finished. With their last option on the table, they would stop at nothing to crush humanity. "Ma'am, we've received intel from the fleet," Commander Hayes said, his face grim as he studied the glowing holographic map. "They've mobilized their final reserve, elite ships, faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. It's all they have left." Evelyn stared at the display, her mind already calculating their next move. The enemy's response wasn't surprising, but it would be their last. The Council had underestimated humanity from the beginning, and now they were cornered, playing their final card. "Send the orders to the fleet," Evelyn said, her voice steely with determination. "We end this now." Her words carried the weight of the last few weeks of brutal conflict. The battle had started as a desperate struggle for survival, but humanity had quickly turned the tide. Now, the Council's final gambit was to throw everything they had left at Earth. And humanity wasn't going to back down. The Nemesis' engines roared as it broke from the defensive formation, charging headfirst toward the Council's reinforcements. The last fleet, composed of the most advanced warships the galaxy had ever seen, was already in motion. But they were too late. "Activate cloaking," Evelyn ordered, as the Nemesis shimmered out of visibility. The human fleet had perfected a new cloaking technology, one that the Council had never anticipated. With it, they could strike without warning, without mercy. "We've got one shot at this," Hayes said, his voice tight with tension. "If they find us before we strike, we're done." "They won't," Evelyn replied, her gaze locked on the enemy fleet in the distance. The cloaking technology would give them the edge they needed to break through the Council's final line of defense. They just had to hold on long enough. The cloaked Nemesis surged forward, the rest of Earth's fleet following suit in a perfect formation. They moved like ghosts through the stars, silent and deadly. The alien ships, unaware of the impending attack, continued their steady approach toward Earth. It was the perfect moment. Now, Evelyn whispered. A single command sent the entire fleet into motion. The Nemesis deactivated its cloaking field, revealing its deadly presence as it unleashed a torrent of fire. The first wave of missiles tore through the front line of the enemy fleet, shattering their defenses and causing chaos within their ranks. For the first time since the battle began, the Galactic Council's elite ships faltered. "We've breached their defenses," Hayes shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. The Nemesis tore through the enemy's front line, firing with pinpoint accuracy. The Council ships, caught off guard, were no match for humanity's relentless assault. The warships crumbled under the firepower of Earth's advanced weapons, their shields cracking and their hulls disintegrating in a fiery explosion. The Council's remaining ships were in full retreat, but it was too late. Humanity's message had been delivered. No one, not even the most powerful species in the galaxy, could stop them now. "Evelyn," Hayes said, his voice breaking through the comms. "We did it. The Council, they're finished." Evelyn's eyes narrowed as she watched the enemy fleet disintegrate on the tactical display. It was over. Humanity had broken through, not just surviving, but emerging as the undisputed force in the galaxy. But even as the final ship of the Council's fleet was destroyed, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here than a simple victory. The Council had thrown everything they had left, and they still couldn't stop Earth. "We've won this battle," she said quietly, her voice cold with the realization that this war was only just beginning. But the war is far from over. The galaxy had been shaken to its core. Humanity had made its mark, but at what cost? The Galactic Council had been decimated, but new powers were already rising. And Evelyn Turner knew one thing for sure. Earth's true fight for dominance was only just beginning. The last remnants of the Galactic Council were scattered across the stars, their fleets reduced to debris. But Evelyn Turner couldn't celebrate. Not yet. The war was over, but the real battle had just begun. Standing at the helm of the Nemesis, Evelyn watched as Earth's fleet moved into position. The silence of space was deafening, the victory still too fresh to grasp. The Council's defeat had come swiftly, and humanity had triumphed against all odds. But now, the consequences of that victory loomed large. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, and there were far darker forces at play. "We've won, but we've made enemies," Commander Hayes said, his voice low as he joined her at the console. "The other galactic powers won't just stand by and let humanity rise." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Hayes was right. The Galactic Council had been the largest obstacle in humanity's path, but it was far from the only one. New, more powerful threats were already beginning to stir in the shadows. Alien empires, once content to stay neutral, would soon look at humanity with suspicion, or worse, hostility. They had seen what Earth could do when pushed to the edge, and they wouldn't forget it. "We're not just defending Earth anymore," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "We're sending a message." The Nemesis powered up, its engines thrumming with energy. Earth's fleet, though still battered from the long conflict, had emerged victorious and intact, ready for the next phase. Humanity had been underestimated, and now the galaxy would have to face the consequences. "Ready when you are, ma'am," Hayes replied. With a single nod, Evelyn made the call. The first wave of humanity's forces moved forward, not with the intent to conquer, but to claim a seat at the table, their rightful place in the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted. Earth was no longer the backwater planet it once had been. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they would carve out their future in a galaxy that had once dismissed them. The comms flared to life. A garbled voice, unfamiliar and demanding, cut through the static. "This is General Xanther of the Haldrex Coalition. We've been watching your rise, human. Consider this a warning." Evelyn's hand hovered over the comm control. The Haldrex Coalition, one of the more militaristic empires in the galaxy, known for their ruthlessness. They had been monitoring Earth's rise, and clearly they weren't pleased. "Tell them we're not here to ask for permission," Evelyn muttered to Hayes, her fingers flying over the console. She could feel the weight of her next words. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was about taking control of humanity's destiny. "We've earned our place," she said into the comms, her voice calm but full of authority. "And we won't be threatened." The message was clear. Earth would not be pushed around. Not anymore. The Nemesis and its fleet moved steadily into new space, leaving the ashes of the Council's empire behind. As they entered the uncharted territories of the galaxy, Evelyn couldn't help but wonder what would come next. The galaxy had already learned that humanity was not to be underestimated, but the real test was yet to come. Would Earth be able to maintain its newfound position, or would others rise up, seeking to push them back into the shadows? Evelyn turned to face the crew, their expressions filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She knew the path ahead would be dangerous, but humanity had proven it could overcome any obstacle. They had the will, the strength, and the ingenuity to not only survive but thrive. "Prepare for what comes next," she said, her voice firm. "We've changed the galaxy. Now, let's make sure they know it." Humanity had taken its first step into the broader universe, and there was no going back. The galaxy was vast, but Earth was no longer just a part of it. Earth was a power unto itself. And for the first time in history, humanity had a future, one it would shape on its own terms.